welcome to this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. The intro clip, we showed the outside and the inside of the building that's being featured in this episode, which is the Merchants and Drovers Tavern Museum in Rahway, New Jersey. Joining me today is my teammate Chris, Al Shipley, who is the president of the Merchants and Drovers Tavern Museum, and I'm John Ruggiero. Al, great to have you here.
Good to be here. And I'm the director of museum operations.
Okay. I lived in Rahway for many years, so the building's very familiar to me. But Al, please tell us a little bit about the history of the Merchants.
Well, it's a great building, and I'm always glad to come to shows like this or groups and talk about our museum. It goes back to about 1795, and it was built as a hotel. Very Spartan, because people who stayed in hotels, men who stayed in hotels, didn't expect much more than a roof and a fireplace in the winter, and that was pretty much it. That was luxury, better than sleeping outside, because that was the alternative. And over the years, like all buildings, all hotels, even today, they have to keep modernizing if they want to stay in business. So the building evolved. If you came into that building in 1795, it would have been a modern 1795 building. And if you came in 1820, additions were put on, modernization was done, wall treatments might have been changed, floors might have been covered over. And if you came in 40 years later, same thing. You would have gone into a hotel that looked modern for the period. The building stays as a hotel and tavern until 1926. And in 1926, it closed mainly because it couldn't modernize anymore. You know, people were going into hotels that had certain things. Our building couldn't do it. So it closes. It's going to be knocked down, but people at that time believed that George Washington had stopped there and maybe stayed there.
Why didn't he stay?
Which he didn't, because the building wasn't built as early as everyone thought it was. But you can see how the legend grew. You have an old building on a road that was real important, Route 27, St. George Avenue, Lincoln Highway, from New York to Philadelphia, the main route. George Washington was on that road, so it made sense that people thought that he might have been there.
For our purposes, what brought us the paranormal in, tell us the story about the unknown woman.
Well, the unknown woman was a great story. I heard about it when I was 10 years old. Just a little bit, just enough to tease me into, putting it in the back of my head somewhere. And then in 2005, I decided to explore the story a little more, thinking I might make a 10-page article about it. And the more I dug, and it took me to libraries all over the East Coast, I found out that there was a story that reached California.
And she was a woman that was found murdered.
She was a woman that was found murdered right down the road from where we're located, and no one ever found out who she was. Her throat was cut. Yeah, she was definitely murdered, brutally murdered, and no one ever found out who killed her. Nobody ever found out a motive. But the bizarre thing, she was killed March 25, 1887, and in a 3-month period, over about 7,000 people came into Rahway to view the body of this woman, with the idea that maybe they could recognize who it was. It was a circus. It was a circus.
And she's buried.
And she's buried in the cemetery, which luckily is located right next door to our building. And I say luckily because when people come to visit our museum, they also get treated into a tour of the cemetery, which is a very, very interesting tour. It
was also kind of thrown out there real quick that maybe Jack the Ripper was the killer.
That's a possibility.
There were a lot of things thrown out there.
Which a person one mentioned to me back in about 2011, and I kind of laughed it off. And yeah, right, you know. And then the more I do research, and I said, well, I'll look into Jack the Ripper, because I didn't know anything about it. You know, I really didn't.
But you mentioned all the research that you did and everything. That's actually in your book.
That's right.
What is the title of your book again?
The Case of the Unknown Woman.
So that really goes into detail.
That goes into detail of
that time.
That's right.
The suspects that they looked into, how they tried to find her identity, and the circus-like atmosphere that you talked about.
Yeah.
So what drew us to the museum and was I lived in that town for many years. I knew the story. I knew that she's buried in the cemetery, which is behind your building. So what drew me there initially was that maybe there was some connection between the paranormal activity that I had heard about in that building, because you had written the book. She's buried not far from where you sit when you're there every day. Right. So maybe she influenced him to write the book to try to solve that murder. And then you have the cemetery behind the building. So there's, if any place could have activity, that sounds like a recipe for some place that could.
That's possible, and that story is certainly an attention grabber. And I never thought that I would take 5 years to do the work to put that book together, but that's how long it took me.
That book can be found on
it's on Amazon. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon.
So you invited us into the building. We were there for several hours, and surprisingly enough, we came up with a lot of evidence. And I'm really interested in seeing your reaction to the clips that we captured and where we captured them. So we're going to start the first clip here. You're looking for initial communication, any kind of reaction using the various types of equipment that we use. The very first interaction we had was actually on the 3rd floor, the steps that lead up to the 4th floor, where not one device interacts, but 2. Let's play that clip. There you go. That's good. Are you trying to get our attention? Would you be willing to answer some questions with that? If you touch it, we could ask you questions, and you can light that up to answer yes or no. Do you want to try that? That's not going to hurt you. Do you want me to back away again? I'll back up if you want me to. It's like as soon as I walk away, it starts going off again. You want to try stuff out here? Because we already have. There you go. There we go. As soon as I walk away. Do you see that square box up above the circle? It's black. If you were to just kind of go near it, or wave your hands in front of it like I'm doing, or even step over it, it's going to light up all that stairwell for you. And it'll let us know that it's you doing that with the circle as well. If you just pass by it or you wave your hand in front of it, it's going to light up the whole entire area for you. You don't have to be afraid of it. It's not going to hurt you. Nothing here is going to hurt you.
Disease. The obvious like
Is it disease?
strong. Disease and strong. You heard that first, didn't you?
So, again, we have initial contact through the REM pod. That circle device, you actually have to almost touch it for it to light up like that and make that sound. And then we never know who we're talking to, especially in a building like this, with the unknown woman being buried in the back, along with all those other people being buried in the cemetery. You don't know who's going to come through and why they're going to come through. So again, the first indication was strong disease. So
Anybody
maybe it was
died
someone
of disease there? Or
trying to.
Well, I don't know if anyone died of disease in the building, but certainly there's people in the cemetery who would have. Sure.
We actually have another clip where
This was a strange one.
a very strange one. in the what we call the Girl Scout room. John has, you'll see, we took the floor in there and we were doing, where we do a reading and map out temperature and see if we can't get an image. Well, on top of the counter right there, John had put a musical box, and we thought that that's what we're getting on the image. But as we looked at it further, you're going to look down when the picture clears, because there's a glare off of the camera at first when we're trying to get the floor. You're going to actually see an image of what seems to be a child that's right there in the room, and that's what's on this clip.
That's what it looks like. It looks like a kid.
I'm picking it up clear enough, but it doesn't look like somebody's peeking out. There it is.
Right
That's
there.
a good shot of it. What the heck? Do you see this? Did you see this? You gotta see this.
All right. Let's see.
You see that?
Yeah.
Is that inside the case?
No, that's under the case. In front of the picture.
It's the red one.
The funny thing is that I made Kenny stand there and hold the thing again to make sure it wasn't reflecting off of him and reflecting back, and it wasn't even him.
It's a thermal imaging device, so it's looking for a heat signature. And in that case, there really shouldn't have been anything giving off heat.
No.
So that's what was really strange, that we captured that small object kind of moving. This next clip, again, when we start to have communication using a particular device, we encourage the spirits to keep using that. If that's what you want to use, keep using that. So I ask out loud, is there anybody here from the cemetery? And this is the reaction that I get. Is there anybody here from that cemetery behind us? Does anybody come in here from... Oh, there you go.
Wow.
What did it say? Leaving.
And I don't know if Leavin was a name that's out there, or...
But this is part of the process of what we do. We're trying to figure out who we're communicating with, why they're there. Did they come from the cemetery? Like detectives,
Sure.
we try to narrow it down. Who are we speaking to? Where did you come from? Who are you?
And on the next clip, it's the same thing. It has to do with the Girl Scout room. And Kenny had walked through the door with a flare because he wanted to continue. He got an image of a little girl. Let me see if I can go in and see what else. And he walked out further, and he wanted to check out what the cemetery looked like from up in that window. John, Tanya, and I were still out in the hall. We're going back and forth, and as John's filming, all of a sudden, we hear the door close. It literally slammed shut.
And I tried to catch it, but I caught the tail
It was
end
just
of
so quick. And you see all our responses and Kenny's response to that happening.
The door just shut on him. The door just shut on him. Did he shut it?
Just said what was
No. The door just shut on him. He's all the way by the window.
Yeah, it's like it's...
Holy
I see the phone from here. And the door just slammed on its own.
I actually thought he shut it. So did I.
I did too. I thought he was going in there.
The door just shut on him. The door just...
So that room there, again, we had the thermal image, and now the door closed. None of it, you could see in the video, Kenny wasn't anywhere near. Have you ever had anything happen on that third floor?
Well, the odd thing about this, the room that you call the Girl Scout room, that's only about maybe a year and a half we've put it together.
Right.
We decided that we would like to have a room that pays tribute to the time the Girl Scouts used our building, and we kind of just put that together with items that we received from Girl Scouts who sent them into us. One day we hope that's going to be a professionally designed room with a lot more items in it. So that's a pretty new room, and to have a youngster, an image of a youngster show up is pretty odd. The other investigators that have been in here, I don't think they've ever gotten anything, in that area.
So you've never heard the door close when you've been there, or anyone else?
No.
So maybe putting items in there, maybe
Maybe.
Attracted something.
That's
Kind
possible.
of strange. The next clip here, you're going to like this clip. We talked about the unknown woman. We
Okay.
don't know her. We don't know her name. It was never really found out who she was or who murdered her. We got a voice on a recorder that is very, very clear. Maybe it's her. Maybe it's somebody else from the cemetery. But I want you to listen to this clip and get your opinion.
Okay.
Can you tell me your name? What's your favorite color? What do we look like to you? What do we look like? Did you hear that?
I heard a whisper. I couldn't tell what it was saying though.
What do we look like to you?
Carissa. Carissa.
What do we look like to you?
Carissa.
What do we look like to you?
Carissa.
I mean, did you hear how clear that was?
That was very clear. That was very clear.
I went into, I just Googled the name Carissa to see if it was a common name back in the 1800s. And it was a very common name back then. So,
Yeah, it doesn't match up with any of the names that we came across for the unknown woman.
Right.
But then again, because we don't know who she was, it could be the name of her.
Possibility,
Sure is.
I mean, that was pretty clear, too.
Sure is.
And there's also, in that room, there are a lot of donated items, too, so maybe there's an attachment to something in that room. So you have cradles and beds.
That's right.
and
I'm
chairs.
just curious as well to maybe go through the records of all the headstones in the cemetery and see if we can come up with a Carissa or how many.
Oh,
are
I'm
actually-
sure there would be.
So
It's gotta be a
that,
ton
I'm
of
sure there
members,
would
too,
be.
so, right?
but whoever
Sure.
it was spoke very clearly and
Yes.
very concise when asked their name.
Yeah.
Well, on this next clip, John uses a piece of equipment called the Echovox, and what it does is it gives out like sounds, ooh, ah, whatever, and then hopefully you hope to have something use that to actually push out words. And John was asking a specific thing, and it actually asked for John's help.
Okay.
So we're going to play that again because the way this device works, as you can see I'm holding a tablet, it's an app. And the app is programmed with phonics, just sounds. And the theory is that spirits could put the sounds together into words. It's echoey, there are a lot of sounds coming through, but if you listen to the beginning of the clip, you hear, help me. And then later on there's a couple of echoes and then it says, John, very faintly. Let's play that clip again.
Well, I heard the John, all right.
Yeah, so
Very clear.
yeah, it's very strange to us again because we're trying to figure out who's there, and maybe it's the unknown woman. Maybe
And the fact that it's something intelligent that's trying to communicate with
it's
us.
from someone from the cemetery. We're trying to put things together. Here's a clip that I like. The same piece of equipment. Listen clearly again, because I'm going to repeat it again on 2 times so you can hear it. I ask about the unknown woman, and I ask if anybody listening could tell me what happened to her. And I'll play you that clip.
Oh, boy.
You know the story of the unknown woman? What happened to her? Your mouth is open. Did you hear it again? It's in between the sounds and the symbols. But
I heard one of the 3, but I did hear that.
So
Yeah.
I could hear it. You know the story of the unknown woman? What happened to her?
And what happened to the unknown woman?
Unknown woman's throat was cut. That's right.
Isn't that bizarre? Again, this is a piece of equipment that in theory spirits can use. And what are the odds that this person or somebody who's listening intelligently is responding?
And anyone from that time period would have known that story and what happened to that woman. Anybody staying there from 1887 when it happened until 1926 when it closed.
And
Anybody
again,
in that hotel would have known that story.
in theory, it's possible that if other spirits are communicating, if that's even possible, somebody knows what happened to her,
Yeah.
and that her throat is cut. That
There's
was
so
a
many
bizarre clip.
theories,
That
yeah.
was
It is.
one when I was listening with the headphones on, really took me back and said, am I really hearing that somebody's acknowledging that that's what happened to her?
That's
Maybe
amazing.
It's pretty
her.
cool to get a validation. That's
Yeah.
that's pretty
Yeah.
unique in itself. And this next one, we're actually in a back room, and they're using the obelisk again. That the same thing. It spits out words, the energy, and we encourage the spirit to try to use the energy to put a word through, and it's programmed like 2,000
words
words.
are programmed.
So it's really unique when we get a word that actually fits to the very moment. When were we in there?
We were in there in January, right?
Watch
Right.
what happens.
Go ahead and sit in that chair. We're not going to go over there. Go ahead. We're not going to go over there. We like that you're trying to interact. So,
January.
yes, it is January. Today is January 26th, I believe.
Yeah.
How bizarre is that?
How bizarre is that?
I mean, you're talking again. 2,000 words are programmed into that box, and the theory is a spirit can pick the word he or she wants to say and present it, speak it out loud. 2,000 words. What are the odds that we're going to get the month that we're in that building?
That's right.
And then why is it saying January?
And why? That's right.
That's an intelligent haunting. To be able to interact that way means it's an active spirit who's listening and reacting. Here's another clip using that same device. Actually, Tanya, one of our other teammates, asked, where did you die in January? And another piece of equipment responds to that. And then Tanya has a premonition of who this possibly could be.
Yeah.
She says it's a man. Let's play that clip. Are you aware?
Abyss. Abyss and what? Console. Did you die in January?
I wonder when she died. Oh yeah, there you go. Got a reaction.
You died in January? Okay.
So something just moved past that. Who are you? Is this Clarissa? Who? Clarissa? Is it
Carissa.
Carissa? Is this Carissa who died in January? Is that who we're talking to again?
This is a man, isn't it?
So you can see where that 360, some energy force has to walk around that. And that's where you'll see where it starts, where the light goes, where it ends. So that's another
boy.
information. The funny thing is that clip ended with, Tanya says it's a male. The obelisk sitting next to her in this very next clip confirms what she said.
Oh boy, you've gotten some good stuff here. This is
Will we find you in the cemetery?
Agent male. Oh, are you shooting me?
I said
You said it was a male.
Again, confirmation. We're actually getting something that's responding to what we're asking and what we're talking about in that
And
moment.
I was channeling the spirit during that curse word. That wasn't me.
Yeah.
That was a disembodied voice that said that. But Tanya has she's sort of sensitive, intuitive. She has a little bit of that. And while we were in that room, she kept saying to me, this is a male. This is a male. And almost as confirming that, the voice came through. We've got further proof of it being
Right
a
after.
man.
yeah, and
or
a
male.
good chance that it would be because only men came to the hotel.
Okay.
Until much later in its history, men only stayed in hotels.
Really?
That's right. Yeah.
So where did the women stay when they were?
They would stay with friends or relatives who lived in the area. Yeah, women were not in hotels. till closer to the end of the 1800s.
So
Yeah.
we have mail. We have a piece of equipment confirming mail. Here's an EVP, an actual disembodied voice captured on a recorder saying their name. Let's see that clip.
What's your name?
Edward.
Get out of here.
What's your name?
That was so freaking clear. Edward, that was so clear.
You could hear that much better on that last little
That's
clip.
right.
Edward.
So again, how strange was it to
very
capture all
strange.
that kind of interaction, and then Edward comes and just says his name. You're asking about me. You keep asking if I'm a man. I'm Edward.
Yeah.
Any history of an Edward?
No, we have no history of who was in that building, but it was, it was loaded with different males and then later females, who just came to stay for, overnight, 2 nights.
So possibility a guest or possibly
Plenty.
a guest from
Cemetery.
the
It could be
cemetery.
anywhere.
Yeah.
So, Al, we had a great time there.
Yeah.
We captured a lot of evidence. Thank you for letting
No
us
problem.
come into the building
I'm
and
glad you
investigate.
came.
Or definitely look to go back there in the future and see if we can communicate with Edward or Carissa again. Thank you for being here
Okay,
today.
very good. I'm glad you came and you come back again. Yeah, we'd like to do that.
Thank you for watching this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. We'll see you next time.